Hi again, people of YouTube. It's been a year after my Joy-Con Drift video. I've heard what you said about my accent. First of all, thank you. I'm very self-conscious about my accent, as I feel I don't really get much practice on my English as I should, as you can imagine. Let's get on with what I have to say. As always, I'll try to respect your time. There's some timestamps to guide this video. And I'll start with some data gathered some time ago, then after, a personal story. Lately, it's been less and less accessible to be a Nintendo fan in Brazil. This has to do with various things. Taxes, the dollar value, Nintendo not giving a damn about us, you name it. Brazilian minimum wage today is equivalent to $242 a month. This is roughly 20% of the American minimum monthly wage. Now, our average wage is equivalent to $567, while the American average monthly wage is $3,714. The average Brazilian makes 15% of what the average American makes. So yeah, we're a third world country desperate to have some economic growth. So, what does this have to do with Nintendo? Pricing and consumer-friendly practices. In Brazil, AAA games, $60 games, cost 25% of our minimum wage. For Americans, it's 4%. For the American median monthly wage, it costs 1.6% to buy a $60 game. Now, for our median, it costs 10% of our medium wage. I have a metaphor I've come up with based on this data, but it's an accurate description of what it feels like buying games over here. If Americans lived on a similar economic situation than Brazilians, buying a $60 game would cost them $342. It would cost more than the console itself. Now, forget Sony, Steam, and Microsoft. I'm going to focus on the reflexes of our economic problems on Nintendo. Keep that in mind. With the costs of AAA games, Brazilians hardly ever get games on launch. We prefer to wait for sales. And even then, they're still too costly for us. We also buy much fewer games. Also, platform migration. Nintendo fans can love their games with all their heart, but if prices are inaccessible, people will either stop buying games altogether, or they migrate to other platforms that offer some price localization measures. The best example is Steam. They are top-notch when it comes to pricing and sales in Brazil, and it shows. 42% of Brazilian gamers use PCs for gaming. And about piracy. Piracy was already one of the reasons Nintendo officially avoided to export hardware to Brazil. Now, Brazil is still behind the US, Russia, and India in pirated content consumption. And although piracy has been declining because of online games and services, some people consider it to be justifiable, and it's because of the game's general pricings. We want piracy to stop being defensible by anyone at all. And there's where we're at. If Nintendo wants to solve this problem, it's totally doable. They already have a Brazilian eShop that's only accessible via browsers on PC and mobile. There we can buy games with our own currency, but for some games it's still more expensive than buying from foreign eShops. For example, before Link's Awakening's launch, there were absolutely no first-party Nintendo games on the top sellers section. They were either demos or indie games. And that's what's the most curious thing. Indie developers localize their prices for the Brazilian eShop, matching their prices with the best sales outside the country, except they're always at sales prices. No surprise they were the only kind of games being sold over here. Yeah, we can't demand Nintendo lowers their prices to a point where they can turn sales into profit. But it would be ideal if they localized their prices for us, even if it wasn't on their own accord. They already have methods of local payment, so it wouldn't be hard to make sure that only Brazilians could benefit of these localizations. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we should have benefits over other countries. I believe residents of every country should pay a fair amount of money on their games based on their economic situation. I'm gonna tell you about a recent breakdown I've had about game pricings over here. It started when I was planning my Christmas games. I planned about getting a game voucher from the Switch Online special offers, so I could get one more game for Christmas, as I can't afford to spend much on games. I was very frustrated to learn that it had already expired. Tough luck. But then I started feeling that I regret all the time being a Nintendo fan and having a Nintendo Switch, all because of the price of games. I started to think about how much easier it would be if I was a PlayStation fan, as Sony has already realized for a while now about our situation. They have sales for their first and third party games all the time. Their prices are always accessible, relatively new games even. For an example, Spider-Man for the PS4 is selling over here for as low as $20, and that game is 1 year old. Meanwhile, Breath of the Wild, the Switch's literal first game, is still being sold for the eShop for $60, without its expansion pass. It's nearly 3 years old. What the hell? There are sales on the PS4 that are just like giving the games away for us. And that's not even talking about PS Plus quality and Microsoft's Game Pass. Xenoblade 2, a game I've been aching to play for years now, has only gone on sale one time on the eShop. And that was on Christmas last year, and I've missed it, sadly. Kirby Star Allies is still a $60 game, even being terrible for a first-party Nintendo game. I could spend hours talking about isolated cases of games costing too much. It's not a matter of only pricing, it's a matter of accessibility. Let me tell you something. I have a decent lifestyle, and my family has a decent salary to sustain it. I'm what you could call an entitled brat that still can count on my parents to cover some of their expenses, such as college, but the fact that even I have to plan ahead to buy games and still get by at the end of the month really says something about what we go through to play the games we love. Nintendo is in the heart of many Brazilians, so many Nintendo fans have flat out given up on following Nintendo's launches and franchises in recent years. Not everyone can have access to Nintendo games over here for how much they cost. And I haven't even talked about the Switch's console price over here. But I think I've already talked too much for now. If this ever reaches Nintendo, please consider adapting to our economic situation. It would make much more people get back to playing Nintendo games. If you've watched this video to the end, thank you. Tell me in the comments how being a Nintendo fan is like for you. Tell me how accessible games are for you and where you're from. If people from your country struggles on buying Nintendo games as well, please feel free to spread this message on videos of your own. It will make me very happy to see more people talking about this, regardless of your nationality. Thank you again, and until next time.